Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Green Witch Homestead. So you have to forgive the wet hair. It's a hot day outside, finally, so we've been in the water. I wanted to do this video because what do I do with all the rest of my eggs? Today, we're gonna touch on something that's called salted duck eggs. One of the reasons that we choose to do the salted duck eggs is because we like to use it in different food sources. Now I'm going to go through the process of how you make your brine, how you get your eggs set, and then what they look like afterwards and what you do when you pull them out of the brine. To make your brine, you want a heavy concentrated solution, so make sure that you use heat to dissolve as much salt as you can. Because there's not really any way to know exactly how much water you're going to need to cover the eggs, because it all depends on how many eggs you're using. Put it in, stir it, stir it, stir it. When you start putting salt in and it just stays at the bottom, that's when you know your brine is perfect. So the container you're going to use depends again on how many eggs you're going to use. You can do this in a mason jar, you can do this in any type of container that's going to hold liquid. Because we do quite a bit at one time, I use these 5-gallon food grade buckets. You can get them from any restaurant that has pickles. Just go in and ask. They'll probably have 1 or 2 empty. Some places will charge you for them. Some places will give them away for free. But what's nice about them is they have a very good sealable lid, and it's going to be perfect for what I'm doing. What you want to do is get your eggs washed. You don't have to use bleach or anything like that. Just mainly get as much of the dirt off of the shell as possible. And then you're going to put them in your bucket. The most important thing to remember when you're putting your eggs in your container is do not crack any shells. If you do have an accident and you just drop an egg, pick it up, check it, and see if there's a crack in the shell. If there is a crack in the shell, make sure that you remove that egg and do not put it in the brine solution. It's just going to spoil, and it does run the risk of spoiling the whole batch. And then once you've got all your eggs in your bucket or your container, whichever you're going to use, you're going to pour your brine solution on top until every egg is covered. I like to put at least 1 inch of water over the eggs. Now, don't freak out if your eggs float. A lot of times you'll see that thing where you can float your eggs to test their viability, if they're good or not. This is a heavy saltwater solution. The eggs are going to float. All right. So once all of your eggs are in your container, you're going to want to pour your brine solution in. As you see, they are floating. So I've made sure that this is fairly deep. And then you're going to want to get a plate or something heavy that you can sit on top of these to make sure that they all stay in that brine. Now, I got super lucky and I found this really cheap plastic plate that is the exact size of my 5-gallon bucket. So when I get these eggs, I put the plate in there and I just push it down under the water. That's pretty much it for this stage. At this point, you put your lid on your bucket and you put your bucket somewhere that's going to be out of sight, or you want to make sure that it's not going to get too hot. Keep it in the house. If you don't have a temperature controlled house, then make sure you have a cold cellar or somewhere you can put it that's going to keep it cool. You're going to want to keep those eggs in there for a minimum of 30 days. No shorter than that. You can go longer. I like to go about 35, 36 days. It makes the perfect salted egg. I've already gone ahead and done a batch of salted duck eggs about a month ago. I did these ones to be used for making mooncakes. They are seasoned with cinnamon and nutmeg and cloves. So I'm going to pull those ones out and show you how you do the next steps. Wanted to show you, I did a smaller container with these ones because I was doing a spiced one and I didn't want to use as many. If you're using a container like this, you can use something like a pickling puck or any other type of smaller heavy stone that you can put on top to help hold the eggs under the water. You would take your eggs out of the brine, crack them all into a bowl, and you're going to notice that the yolk looks a little weird. So when you salt your duck eggs, this is what happens. It soaks all of the moisture out of the yolk and it makes it this hard, slightly translucent yolk. So once you crack your eggs, you would take your yolks, get as much of that egg white off as you can, and then you dip it into a high percentage alcohol. I'm using vodka. That's going to get the rest of the egg whites off and kill any bad bacteria that might be on the yolk. which, considering how salty that environment is, there's not much. You can take the egg in this form and wash the shell and then put this into boiling water and cook it like a hard-boiled egg, and that would be just a salted duck egg, and you would eat it just as it is after it's been boiled. It's a little treat. However, there are many other ways to use the salted duck yolks, which I'm going to go through here. There is no rule that says you have to use duck eggs. You can use any eggs that you have. The reason why traditionally it's duck eggs is because duck eggs have larger yolks, and considering in 90% of the way you use these, you're discarding the egg white. So you want that bang for your buck, so going with the duck eggs gives you that higher yolk ratio. This is what your yolks are going to look like once you've taken them out of the whites and cleaned them off by dipping them in a little bit of alcohol. I set them out on this tray here. Now, at this stage is where most of the traditional methods for using the salted yolks are going to come into play. From this point, you can do several different things. You can take your yolks and store them in a mason jar in some type of vegetable oil and in the refrigerator for up to 3 weeks and use them as you see fit. Or you can put them into Ziploc baggies or vacuum seal bags and freeze them. Another thing that you can do is you can take them from this stage, put them in an oven or a dehydrator, and dry them out and cook them a little bit. The reason you would do that is for making the traditional egg yolk sauce. Once you get your eggs all nice and dried, you would crumble them up, add a little bit of seaweed and sesame salt. Then you would have your powdered salted duck egg yolks, and you can store them in glass jars with good seals on the lids anywhere that's cool and dark. Then when it's time to make your sauce, you would just take a small portion of that powdered mix and add some hot oil over top, stir it in real quick, and you have this amazingly smooth and creamy, slightly salty egg yolk sauce that you can pour over so many different dishes. My favorite is to put it on a hot bowl of rice, and then you get to have what's called golden rice. This particular batch that I just cracked out, I am going to use for baking with, because you can put them in different pastries and rice balls. The reason I'm using these ones, I did season the brine to have other spices in it, which does come out in the flavor of the yolk. So what I'm going to do with these ones is I'm going to let them sit on the counter for a little bit and dry off, and then I will pack them into freezer bags and freeze them for use when I need to bake with them. The batch that we started today that's in the 5-gallon bucket is just a salt brine, so those I will save and use for making sauce and other savories like that. So I've put some into the oven, and I've done this at 250 degrees. They'll be in there for about 20 minutes or so, and then I'll just turn the oven off, but leave them in with the door closed. That's going to cook them and dry them out so I can crumble them up for making the sauce. The rest, now that they've dried out a little bit, I've gone ahead and put them, make sure that they're not touching, and I've put them in the freezer, and I will freeze them on the cookie sheet, and then I will put them in their individual bags. It's always fun for me to look at other cultures and learn how they use and preserve food, because you have to remember that people have been eating and preserving food far longer than we've had refrigerators and freezers. So there's always some way to make something that's normally spoilable last much longer than you think it would. Salted duck eggs may not be up everyone's alley, but there's so many different ways to use them. I highly recommend trying. At least do it with a dozen. And again, like I said, it can be chicken eggs. Try it once. Go through the different ways of preparing them, consuming them. You might find something that you really, really love and you never would have tried it before. Either way, it's a great way to use up eggs that you can't sell or get rid of, and they'll last a lot longer, and they're not going to take up any space in your refrigerator. If you enjoyed this video today, please give me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button if you want to follow along with other recipes and homesteading stuff. Drop a comment below if you've ever eaten salted duck eggs, or maybe you've had egg yolk sauce before. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, get your hands dirty.